just leave that there because the Prime Minister, Scott Morrison's just stepped up for a media conference.
December with Jenny, catching one of my favourite acts with Tina Arena, who was one of the first to come and perform here. And this is a magnificent venue, and it's a credit to everyone at West HQ for what they've been able to achieve here on the old Rooty Hill site. It's still the Rooty Hill RSL, but the vision and the foresight that was led by their board and what they've been able to develop here, I think is incredibly exciting to have a venue of this standing, this capability. I think Guy was giving it a good check out today, and it really is of an international standard. And to have the world's greatest acts, including our own amongst those, being able to come here and perform, I think is just tremendous for Western Sydney, Melissa, and we're very excited about its future. This venue was not built for 6 months, it was built for 50 years. And it will see great acts return. It will see great crowds fill these seats behind us. And that's principally why we're here today. But before I go to that, I want to say a couple of things. Firstly, about the heartbreaking announcements today by Qantas. 6,000 employees who have been working with Qantas for a long time will no longer have a place at Qantas because of the impacts of the COVID-19 recession. Many of those will be in my own electorate in Cook in southern Sydney, as they will be in many parts of our city. And this will be a hard few months. These are hard days, Australia. They're very hard days. And our strength and our togetherness is tested on almost a daily basis, and Australians continue to prove themselves strong. But we're going to really need to call on that strength in the months ahead. And certainly to all of the Qantas family who will be hurting badly today, I extend my deepest regrets about what has had to be announced today. Thing about Qantas employees is they're passionate about the company they work for and the business they're in, and they understand ultimately that when you can't put planes in the air, then the business can't make money. And I know that they will understand that, but it won't make it any easier. And so I had a very good discussion last night with Alan Joyce, as he referred to today, and we'll certainly be continuing to do everything we currently are doing, whether it's in Qantas or indeed in Virgin and other parts of the aviation sector. But as I've said many times, there will be parts of our economy that will feel the effects of the COVID recession for much longer, and that is true here in the entertainment industry and the media and the arts sector as well. So I reach out to those Qantas employees, not just those who obviously will be no longer with the company. We'll be there to support them through the many other programs and to assist them as they look for new opportunities in other parts of the economy as the Australian economy builds back. And we had the news obviously today with the IMF pointing out once again that relatively speaking, that Australia, even though we have these terrible job losses, is making its way better than almost any other developed economy in the world. And that's where the hope comes from, because the hope says that we're on our way back. And as hard as these days are, there are better days ahead. And we're here to talk about better days ahead for the entertainment and the media and the arts sector. We have already acted, and the sector has already significantly benefited from programs like JobKeeper, and from those who are unable, who weren't 90% of employees in the sector pool worked in businesses that were eligible for JobKeeper arrangements, subject to the turnover and other tests that were there. That's been an enormous support to the sector until now, and in the consultations we've had as recently as last week, which Dan and Guy joined us for, that has been an important part of keeping people in this sector, and we met some of them here today. The capability of our entertainment business is significant, as you can see on display here, not just the physical venues, but the people who make the show, whether it's on stage or off stage. It's incredibly important. One of the things we've been focusing on in this sector is understanding the business of entertainment, the business of performing arts. And whether it's Guy or others, they're great performers, they're incredible talents. We all know that, but they're great business people. And they take big risks. They run businesses that employ people, And they feel the responsibility of that like any other business leader in Australia today. And this sector has had their businesses taken away from them overnight. Businesses like staging that we were just talking to before have had to adapt, and that's the process they've been going through. But what we're announcing today is having done the initial support to help people through, to cushion that blow, to keep the sector together, to provide support to other parts of the sector that is providing relief. Now it's about the way back. Now it's about ensuring that we can get the show back on the road and the workers back into the jobs. The thing I love about this sector is the passion about this sector. When Mark Vincent was on the call the other day, he just said, "I just want to sing again, PM." And I want him to sing again too, and so does my mum, by the way. And he's passionate about getting back on the stage. But he's also passionate, as Guy and Dan and all the other industry leaders we spoke to, they're passionate about getting the shows back on because they know that what that's going to mean. So today we're announcing $250 million of additional support into the sector, which is all about getting the show back on the road and the workers back in the jobs, doing what they love doing. And that has several components to it. There is a $35 million component which goes to supports arts businesses and organisations which are at risk of going into insolvency. There is a further combined package of concessional loans, which will be done through the banks, 100% guaranteed by the Commonwealth Government, some $90 million, and some $75 million in direct grants to support getting productions back up and running. This is about building back. This is not just about providing ongoing support. This is about getting the show back up and running. And there is technical issues that need to be dealt with, and this falls more into the screen side, but it's also been raised in the performing arts side, about getting key person insurance and things of that nature, which is essential to actually getting the productions running again. And so these are issues that have been raised by the sector. We've listened carefully to the issues that they've raised. They've written to us about these things. Paul, I want to commend you for the great work you've done in listening. There's been a lot of listening going on. And the key thing that I think has been important for us to really get a full appreciation of is the serious business of entertainment and the hundreds of thousands of jobs that are here. And we want to keep that capability together. Those jobs will come back into those businesses when the shows start again. And we need to keep them. We need to keep the show together when it comes to the people who make that up. The highly technical skills that go into this, the commercial experience of putting productions together and drawing for every production a completely often different new team of different businesses and people who come together. And so keeping that team together is incredibly important, and that's what this support is about today. We've been careful. What this package is about is creating the new shows, the new productions, the new performances. Now, the vast majority of people are working in this sector and businesses, as we heard, effectively their revenue has gone to zero. They haven't gone down by 30% or 50%. They've gone down by 95 to 100%. And the only thing that gets those jobs stood up again is the production starting again. And so whether it's Harry Potter down in Melbourne or Hamilton coming or any of these sorts of big productions, I mean, the scale of these enterprises is large. And so we will see tens, hundreds of thousands of people as the industry gets back up on its feet, both through these programs and the multipliers that come from these productions going and getting running again. One of the things we learned as we listened to the sector is that these shows are typically put on out of people's own capital. They often will not even go to the bank to secure any loans against the production itself. So they've been running down their own capital. They've been pulling off their own superannuation to pay their staff on top of what they've been getting through JobKeeper. And that means their capital is largely shot. And so the lesson for us was we had to fill the capital pool again for them. And we've done that in two ways. We've done it through direct grants, effectively equity, and without taking an ownership stake. No, just it doesn't have to. That's just a direct grant to boost their equity. But on top of that, concessional loans. Now, this is actually quite a similar practice we've used in flood relief. I remember when I was up in North Queensland, and Guy, you can put Cloncurry on your tour list too. I know they'd be keen to see you. Up there, when those terrible floods went through North Queensland, we put together a package of grants, for restocking and loans to support the restocking secured against the stock. And the combination of those two things has actually helped them significantly up there. And it was my learnings from that, talking to Paul, listening to what was, and it was eerie that there was, I mean, obviously two very different issues, and I'm not seeking to draw any equivalence between the two, but the response was quite similar. They needed capital and they needed finance, and they needed that to be done and in an unsecured way. So they didn't have to put their house on the line for it. And so I think it's quite important that that's how we've pulled these measures together. And we hope it supports hundreds of thousands of jobs. Just not now, because once this sector gets going again, I mean, its momentum will just build, and we'll see all of those people coming back into work.
So when you say hundreds of thousands, do you want to see 50% of the creative industry sector back in jobs? What's the target?
Well, the challenge we've got right now, which is the other point the sector made to us, is there's these challenges of capital and getting the shows up and running again, but there's also the issues of the certainty that they need to plan around the restrictions. And that's why, again, tomorrow I'll be raising this with the premiers and the chief ministers. Being able to tell Guy when you can fill a stadium, or no, stadium, there you go, or when, fill a theatre like this or a venue, when that can happen and how many. I mean, at the moment, in outside venues, around sporting, they're going to 25% of that capacity. But if, Richard, if you had to run a production here on 25% full of this venue, that would be very difficult to make that pay. And so, getting some certainty about when venues can operate at different levels of restrictions is, frankly, almost, if not more important than even what we've done today. So when you combine the certainty of what they can plan for, so they can actually go forward, access these grants and these loans to actually plan for that, and then have the confidence that when the show's ready to go, it can actually go on, then it all works again. And this is one of the challenges of the COVID recession. It's unlike others because it hasn't been caused by an economic event. I mean, the same is true with the devastating news at Qantas. That has been caused by a global pandemic. That is what has caused these terrible job losses and the changes that Qantas have had to put in place to respond to that. We have to deal with the opening up again and get certainty about those issues, and that will see the jobs come back.
Prime Minister, is there a sense of frustration on a federal level, talking about planning and what Guy was just saying and how long it takes to plan these big events, that the premiers aren't on board? It seems that they seem to be a little bit rogue. You'd have to accept that there's still going to be a level of assurancy from these industries that, going forward, they feel that they probably can't plan these things.
Well, that's certainly the feedback we've had, and we'll have another, very constructive meeting of the National Cabinet tomorrow. And look, I think in the main, there's been an enormous commitment by the premiers and chief ministers. I mean, we're working well through our three-step plan. We said that would be completed in July, and we're largely on track for that. There are a few challenges in Melbourne at the moment, but as we said, there will be outbreaks, there will be changes. And what can't happen is we can't go stop, go, stop, go. We can't flick the light on and off and on and off and on and off and on and off. That would be very difficult for the artists, the producers who are bringing together the productions to have that uncertainty hanging over them. So what I'm saying is we're moving ahead. We're going ahead. We've built the protections to deal with outbreaks, whether that involves, as when I spoke to Premier Andrews the other night and he sought that support from the ADF and was provided immediately. I got straight onto the phone to General Campbell and we threw the plan into action. If that's what it takes, then that's what we'll do, because that's what's going to keep people in jobs. We can respond to these outbreaks. We can deal with it. We are dealing with the coronavirus, the COVID-19, better than almost any country in the world. And that's got to give us confidence to be able to move ahead, whether it's in this sector or in any of the other sectors. But there will be sectors that will be harder hit for longer, and that's what today is about.
Businesses losing 100% of their...
call with you last night, he asked for an extension of JobKeeper for the aviation sector. Is that something you're considering? And if not, will you commit to further financial assistance for the tourism industry as well?
Well, we are working through those issues right now. They are very complex. What I said, as Alan faithfully repeated today, was that we know that there are sectors that will continue to be held down by the COVID recession because of the restrictions that are in place, such as in this sector or in the global aviation sector, which has been decimated. And what Qantas has been able to do despite the global impact in the aviation sector, has been quite extraordinary, despite what is just the awful news today. And so I was very clear last night that we know that those sectors that continue to be significantly affected will need continued support. And so we are just working through the best way to target and deliver that support. As he said today, whether it's through JobKeeper or other measures, what matters is actually an understanding that that's the problem. We know that's the challenge. We know that's the challenge in the entertainment industry. And they will similarly be affected long after that. In many other sectors, though, that we're seeing a return. We're seeing businesses open again, and they're in a much stronger position. So we know that there needs to be targeted support. We're working on how that targeted support can be best delivered, and that's why I'll be returning back to Canberra again today to spend quite a few more hours in a room with Josh Frydenberg and Matthias Cormann and my other colleagues, as we have been doing all week on this very issue.
Given those struggles, is it appropriate or even legal for states to keep their borders closed to domestic tourists or even pick and choose which states are allowed in?
Well, it's never been the decision of National Cabinet to have internal state borders. It's just never been the decision of our grouping of National Cabinet. They are unilateral decisions that have been taken by premiers. But my message to all of us who form that National Cabinet is now's the time, I think, very much to support each other. Victoria's got a challenge at the moment, and I want to thank the support that has been provided to Victoria by Gladys Berejiklian in New South Wales and Stephen Marshall, also in South Australia, and I know also Peter Gutman has reached out, and I have no doubt that Anna and Mark have also, been lending moral support to that as well. We're working quite well together as a team. Sure, there are a few times when state rivalries sort of poke up, and I know that can be frustrating to people. And we've got to just keep the focus on keeping the economy opening and getting people back into jobs. We've got to live alongside COVID. It's not going anywhere. And we now have to look forward to, and we've got the systems and protections in place, as we're demonstrating even now with the outbreak in Victoria. And I think we've just got to keep all that in perspective, and we've got to keep forging ahead and do that together.
Will the organisations that are predominantly funded by the states be able to access this funding you've announced today?
Well, what we should have mentioned before is about 100 million, and I'll ask Paul to comment on this. There's 100 million already coming in for the states, from the states into the entertainment sector. So this 250 million is on top of that. I should also stress that 250 million we've committed today is for the next 12 months, not over 4 years. It's right here, right now, getting it out the door to support those productions in the next 12 months, which is quite unlike some of the packages you've seen in other countries, which go over 4 years. This is going in the next 12 months to really get things going. But Paul, you want to comment on the statements?
Yeah, thanks, Prime Minister. So funding for the arts and entertainment sector, there's a set of shared responsibilities between the Commonwealth and state and territory governments. We're certainly keen to work with the state and territory governments. I've already had the chance to speak with a couple of state and territory arts ministers, and I'll be speaking with the others. But we also have a clear set of arrangements in terms of particular companies that are supported in a mixed way by state and by Commonwealth, and we'll look to work with the states and territories. I make the point also that much of this funding is going to go to organisers of festivals, of events, things where traditionally or historically government's not been involved, but we're getting in there in an unprecedented way because of these unprecedented circumstances to provide support, to provide additional capital to back the organisations that are wanting to put together events, and to give that shot of confidence so that, as we've heard from Guy and others, there's a lead time. It takes months to plan, to get the tour in place, and it also takes the confidence to inject your own money in it. What we're now saying is we're going to put Commonwealth money in there, and if the states and territories want to come to the party on that as well, that's great. And already we've seen over 150 million of being announced in total across the different states and territories. But this is about building that.